Meet Dr. Aryan, an archaeologist from India. He is part of a group of specialists working on massive Buddha statues that were almost destroyed 5 years ago. He's just arrived in Afghanistan with his friends, Bilawal and Tomiko. The monuments are in the city of Bamiyan, and they were damaged by the Taliban, which is still a very active threat in the area. But Dr. Aryan is the kind of scientist who's ready to risk his life for a chance to bore future students to death. Inspired by him, the group gets busy digging. It's not every day that you see a giant eat lifted in the air like that. But Aryan is not even paying attention, and for a very good reason. There's a treasure chest buried in the sand. Everyone is amazed at what they find inside. Some of the stuff dates back to the 7th century. Aryan immediately realizes that these are Indian relics. The coins are from the time of Dahir Sen, king of the Sindh. The discovery is so jaw-dropping that no one notices a shady little guy making a phone call. A few minutes later, the Taliban decides to crash the party. While people begin to run for their lives, Aryan grabs the treasure chest firmly. Bilawal tries to reason with him, but gets ignored. So he decides to help his crazy friend. They carry that thing across the digging site, miraculously escaping all the explosions until the ground seeds right below them. Sliding through a dusty secret passage, they accidentally find a giant reclining Buddha that nobody knew about. The statue is totally intact, looking at that pair of clowns with his resting Buddha face. A week later, Aryan and Bilawal are sharing the discoveries with a bunch of reporters. It is announced that the treasure is to be split into Pakistan and India. One of the journalists begins to question that decision. Appealing to Aryan as a fellow countryman, he says India should have it all. For religious reasons, of course, but Aryan himself disagrees. Sharing these goodies from the start is the only way to prevent rivalry between the countries, especially because they have different religions. The journalist then asks about his personal beliefs, probably fishing for some hypocrisy. But Aryan is not afraid to reveal his complete skepticism. He is a man of science, and as such, he refuses to believe in anything that cannot be proven. Now we meet Aryan's family. His wife is Professor Gayatri, and she doesn't really share his repulse towards faith. That's how the baby Ganesha comics made their way into the house. Gayatri gave them to their son, Kabir. Fortunately, Aryan is too happy to fight about it. He has just been promoted to joint director of the ASI, the Archaeological Society of India. Meanwhile, an angry crowd is protesting in front of Pushpak Shipping headquarters. A new project has been announced, and it involves the demolition of a natural bridge called Ram Setu. The problem is that many people believe that the bridge was actually built by Sri Ram, because that's what it says in the Hindu scriptures. Pushpak CEO is a man named Indrakant Varma. Very upset at such a costly hiccup, he calls a meeting with the people who failed to prevent this and demands an immediate solution. One of his associates has an idea, and that's how Dr. Aryan comes back to the story. The ASI is now suddenly interested in the historical value of Ram Setu, especially that part where it has nothing to do with Sri Ram, which would be awfully convenient for Pushpak Shipping. Dr. Shaina gives the assignment to Aryan. He's supposed to write a report about the structure, without worrying too much about hard evidence and details like that. As Aryan replies that he needs to research the matter, Shaina tells him he can do whatever, as long as the research arrives at the conclusion he is dictating to him right now. Ram Setu is a natural accident, which means it was not built by anyone at all. It is heavily implied that a refusal would jeopardize that recent promotion. Accepting that task is Aryan's first mistake. The second one is printing the report at home. Gayatri is a fast reader, and she's furious about the research. Regardless of her own faith, she fears that such a heretical report may get their family ostracized. Also, she's appalled at his level of bootlicking. Fueled by the domestic quarrel, Aryan takes the report a little too far. It says that the scriptures are nothing but fantasy and questions the very existence of Sri Ram. The public is totally enraged, just like Gayatri predicted. The whole matter ends up in the Supreme Court. The judge finds himself in the difficult position to define the limits between fact and fiction in a country where religion plays a major role. But hey, this is the Supreme Court. They can just pass the ball when it's on fire. And they decide to throw it back at the ASI, and that's how Arian gets suspended. But Dr. China is not cross at him for too long. While that report angered lots of folks, it also happened to please the right person. Arian is invited to meet Mr. Varma, who explains the new project and how profitable it is. Varma is even willing to fund an archaeological expedition, including all the bribery involved to get deep-sea access. He wants Arian to lead the mission, not only for his expertise, but also because he won't let faith cloud his judgment. Arian is too afraid of his wife to accept the offer, but Varma tells him to think about it. He also points out that his name is already tied to the controversy, and it's pointless to avoid it now. Sadly, Arian gets to find out for himself that Varma is right. He gets attacked by random strangers, and then Kebir is bullied at school. When he tells Gayatri that he will fight this with more science, she decides to leave him, which means he's now free to accept Varma's generous offer. A cute yellow chopper flies him over Ram Setu. It's an impressive strip of sand defying the power of the ocean for 30 miles. And then he gets to Pushpak Alpha, the company's floating lab. A man named Bali introduces himself as the project manager. Arian notices his gun with some concern, but he forgets all about it when he sees all the resources made available to him. The team is formed by several renowned scientists, including Dr. Gabriel, an expert in carbon dating. Dr. Sandra is an environmentalist. Bali makes sure to say she was only included to clear the company of any accusations. She doesn't look too comfortable with that introduction. After the introductions, Arian gets into a funny suit named Makar. Bali describes it like a mini-submarine. They lower him down and the adventure begins. Arian is mesmerized by the beauty of that underwater paradise. Approaching Ram Setu, he gets to walk on the submerged part, as if it were a regular bridge. Aided by a team of scuba divers who didn't get a fancy suit, Arian begins to collect samples of everything. They're taken to Dr. Gabriel at the lab. Bali makes sure that everyone understands their goal here. According to the scripture, Sri Ram was born around 5000 before Christ, so they need to prove that the structure was already there way before that. Analyzing some of the sediment samples, Gabriel was able to determine their age as around 18,000 years old. Bali is happy at these results, until Arian comes party pooping as usual. He says the sediment is not enough to back their claim. They need the actual rocks that form the main structure. Dr. Sandra points out that collecting those rocks won't be easy. They'll need to break part of the bridge itself. Arian shows them a specific spot where it looks weaker. There might even be some loose rocks around. But Bali says that area is too close to their boundary. The problem is that Ram Setu connects India to Sri Lanka. Arian had agreed, since the beginning, to keep the research in Indian waters to avoid conflict. He promises Bali that he'll be careful but insists they must at least try. What's the point of using all this tech and stuff if they're gonna come back with questionable evidence? So he's back into the funny suit, escorted by his less equipped colleagues. As Dr. Sandra feared, the rocks are not easy to detach. Just when Arian begins to think he's about to fail, a loose rock floats by, luring him into Lankan waters. On the ship, the ladies are startled by Bali's anger. Determined not to tolerate that kind of disobedience, he pulls Arian up. But all he gets is the upper part of the suit. Once again, the crazy scholar chose to risk his life instead of letting go of a juicy sample, which looks like a cabbage head run over by a truck. By the way, Gabriel takes Mr. Cabbage to the lab. Then, by now, Sandra also has the results on the corals that make up part of the structure. She is very surprised. The corals come from a completely different place. They have been intentionally planted there, no question about it. And as they're part of the bridge, this actually proves that at least part of their theory is wrong. Ram Setu was not formed naturally. If that doesn't devastate Arian completely, We still have Gabriel's results. The rock is 7,000 years old, of course, just like Sri Ram. And the cherry on the top is that they also seem to have been brought here. The only thing this could have gone worse is if they had found Sri Ram's ID tangled up in the moss. Now, this is where we have to give our hero a bit of credit. Is he stubborn? Very much. Is he a fun guy? Never. But he is definitely very honest. His honesty is so deep that it verges on stupidity. Don't forget that he is on Varma's ship, in the middle of nowhere, supervised by an armed bully. Arian ignores all that. In a video call with the boss, he declares that the bridge is a man-made structure that was built around 5,000 before Christ. Only Sandra and Gabriel back him up. The other so-called scientists tell Varma what he wants to hear. Surprisingly, Varma doesn't sound angry at all. He only asks them to try and get a sample from a rock that is still attached to the main structures in order to dispel any possible doubt. As damaging the sacred bridge might backfire later, he tells them to cross the border into Sri Lanka and do it at night. Bali can barely hide his horror at all this. It's like the school principal telling the children that it's okay to eat in the classroom. This time, there's no suit. Arian descends in a bubble-like vehicle with both ladies in the back seat. Once they're underwater, Gabriel reveals the fourth passenger. Mr. Cabbage is hidden inside her bag. She doesn't trust Bali or Varma. This little international trip could be just an excuse to drive them away and destroy the evidence. Oh, poor Gabriel. Who are the only 3 people who spoke against the company-approved theory? Where are they now, Gabriel? Surely not inside the bubble car that is fully controlled by Bali. There is a limit for stupidity. Or is there? Because it soon becomes obvious that it's not the evidence that Varma wants to destroy. The only way to escape the attack is by leaving the submarine. Bali was probably counting that attempt as just another type of certain death. Except that they have a floating rock. So Mr. Cabbage saves the day, keeping the 3 stooges afloat until they're rescued by a Lankan fisherman who calls himself AP. He is a charismatic guy who loves telling stories about the myths surrounding the bridge. It kind of gets on Arian's nerves, but that guy has more to offer than bedtime stories. As a former travel guide who knows a lot about Ram Setu, he knows exactly where they can find more cabbage. I mean, more rocks. The ones that are still attached. You see, this is the part where we ignore the fact that this was Varma's request, and there's no need to get that anymore. On AP's speedboat, Gabriel asks him about a scar in his forehead. He tells them about a childhood accident that led to 7 stitches. But he has no time to finish his story. 2 boats are coming their way. Bali is coming for his cabbage. AP makes a U-turn when the men start shooting. They're chased to the shore and then into the woods. A helicopter comes to rescue them. AP says they're the rebels who fight against the government. Arian despairs to find out they didn't save everyone. Where is Mr. Cabbage? He's gone. Gabriel can't believe Arian is worried about the evidence at a moment like this. They begin to argue about it, and Arian only wins because Bali fires at the helicopter and hits Gabriel, who falls off. Arian and Sandra are then taken to a rebel camp with AP. Completely obsessed with disproving his own theory now, Arian clings to the unoriginal excuse that Gabriel's death cannot be in vain. He calls Gayatri to let her know she was right. He also says Sri Lanka is comparatively unexplored in archaeological terms, which means he'll be digging around for a while. She is worried about the civil war that's going on, but he says Lord Hanuman will protect him. Gayatri is glad to see how much he changed. Sandra is easily convinced to join him, but AP makes sure to stress his financial motivation. As long as he gets paid, he's happy to help the research. But they must hurry now. Gayatri told Arian that a fake report has been published, using those sediment samples that were much older. There will be a Supreme Court ruling in 3 days, and it may lead to the demolition of the bridge. To make matters worse, they'll have to conduct the research while also trying to escape armed goons. Who would know shipping companies were that vicious? Anyway, Varma may have friends in high places, but AP has friends in weird ones. A series of historical breakthroughs is set in motion in 2 days, leading the trio to a secret tunnel with several interconnected chambers. Decoding the inscriptions on the ceiling, Arian gets the directions to Trikut Mountain. On their way there, they realize why so many historians have failed to find all the stuff that seems to be falling on their laps. The ancient maps are marked by animal figures and geometrical shapes that aren't actually there. It's all about the shadows. That's how they get to a field covered in a kind of plant that doesn't grow there. But that's just when the helicopter arrives. Knowing that Gayatri is the only person who can think like Arian, Bali forced her to work out his route to that spot. The 3 of them are captured, and Bali demands that cabbage. He's so angry to hear they don't have it that he throws AP off the chopper. This is the second person to die this way. Maybe this is what triggers the badass inside Arian and Sandra. They overpower Bali, kick out a henchman, and cause the chopper to crash. Arian comes back inside the aircraft that is about to blow up to retrieve some of the evidence. The insanity pays off though. Guess who he finds tucked into AP's bag? You know who it is. Mr. Cabbage. That's the only evidence that was missing. Together with the samples and manuscripts they've collected, they now have enough to rudely interrupt the court hearing and stop the demolition. Going through the rest of AP's stuff, Arian finds the red notebook. That's where he was supposed to be keeping track of the expenses so they could pay him later. But there is nothing of the sort in there. The notebook is filled back to back with the same sentence, a common saying praising Sri Ram. Then, Arian's son begins to read a story from the baby Ganesha book, and the dots are connected. A lot of AP said about himself is also present in various accounts about the life of Lord Hanuman. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2022 movie Ram Setu by Cape of Good Films, starring Akshay Kumar and Jacqueline Fernandez. So, what would you have done in Arian's place? Would you stand up against a powerful CEO? Let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.